Obviously, veterans are going to be letting their healthcare provider know about these things at appointments. A tip to our veterans, even if it's the same symptoms every time you show up at the doctor's appointment, I know a common refrain is, well, why tell the doctor about it? I've told them about it 100 times before, they're not going to fix it. The point is documenting. But are there other things veterans can be doing to show their symptoms, show the severity to the VA?
Sure. If you have pancreatitis and you're trying to demonstrate the severity of the symptoms, a log is probably the best way to go, or is a good way to go. Make a note. Today I had constipation, today I had diarrhea, today I had abdominal pain. Today it was so bad I had to go to the quick care because I was having abdominal difficulties. And one of the tricky parts with this is that things like gastritis and Crohn's disease and pancreatitis, those symptoms all kind of merge together. From the point of view of the sufferer,
Sure.
Those things are all pretty similar. But if you're a veteran and you're having these abdominal problems, number one, you want to talk to your doctor about what the likely diagnosis is, but if you're contemplating applying for benefits, you really want to keep a log saying, this is what happened today, this is what happened this day, because nobody remembers. I mean, the reality is the human mind does not like to retain the experience of pain. So you just won't remember 6 months from now at your C&P exam how many times you had diarrhea or constipation or abdominal pain that interfered with your daily activities. You won't. So write it down, and then you can take it and show it to the examiner and say, all these days I had these problems.
Welcome to the Victory Over VA podcast, a podcast about empowering veterans to overcome denied disability claims. Each week, we deliver critical insights to help you understand the disability process, veterans' benefits, and how to take control of your legal rights. Now here's your host, Attorney Francis Jackson.
Welcome to Victory Over VA. If you're a veteran struggling with the VA's disability system, or just want to make sure you're getting the benefits you've earned, you're in the right place. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss an update that could change your life. I'm Christian Terrison, here with renowned veterans disability attorney Francis Jackson of Jackson and MacNichol. Jack has dedicated his career to helping veterans like you win the benefits you deserve, recovering millions of dollars for thousands of heroes. This podcast isn't just for veterans navigating the system, though. It's for their families, their friends, and anyone else who wants to stand shoulder to shoulder with those who served. So stick around, because we're here to make sure you get the support you need.
And today I understand we're going to talk about pancreatitis.
Yes, pancreatitis. Specifically, can you get service-connected and disability benefits for pancreatitis, and how does the rating work? So,
Sure.
Does the VA recognize pancreatitis as its own disability for service connection?
Pancreatitis is a recognized disability. They rate it under diagnostic code 7347, and they rate it based on the severity of the condition, like everything else.
Okay. Now, does pancreatitis differ from other, digestive or gastrointestinal conditions that the VA rates? Typically, when something gets its own code, they give it its own distinct criteria as well, though, I have seen them copy and paste.
Sure. You can get ratings up to 100% depending on the severity. So, for example, if you're looking for 100%, you'd need to show frequent disabling attacks of abdominal pain with other symptoms like malabsorption of the food, diarrhea, severe malnutrition. Typically, you'd have to be hospitalized over it 3 or more times a year. That's to get to 100% for that condition only.
Okay.
There are lower ratings. 60%, for example, is available for those who have at least one episode of abdominal pain or mid-back pain every year that requires medical treatment. And, the other symptoms, the bloating, the diarrhea, all the fun stuff with GI disorders.
All right.
And then a 30% rating is available if there's at least one episode a year that requires just outpatient treatment as opposed to hospitalization, which is required for the 60% rating.
Okay. So looking to service connection, what in-service factors would go toward causing or aggravating pancreatitis?
Well, you want to look for a couple of things. Agent Orange exposure it is not so obvious that Agent Orange exposure causes pancreatitis that they've made it a presumptive condition. But there is medical evidence that suggests that, in fact, Agent Orange exposure can cause pancreatitis. So if someone served in Vietnam, either boots on the ground or in the offshore waters of Vietnam, that's one possible approach. Exposure to other kinds of chemicals is an arguable approach to showing pancreatitis. There are some other toxic exposures that, again, it's not guaranteed that A causes B, but it's possible. So, it's one of those that is necessary to show a direct service connection. You've got to have medical opinion and so on. The other thing that you want to look for pancreatitis is symptoms of GI problems while in the service, as showing a potential onset of the condition. Because, as you know, any condition that actually existed during service is presumptively connected to service.
Mm-hmm. Now, here's one that I wanted to ask about, just because sadly it pertains to a number of veterans that I've worked with. But long-term alcohol use is obviously a big factor for pancreatitis. If that alcohol use is tied to, a mental health condition that is service connected, can there ever be secondary service connection?
There can. We've had a fair amount of success with mental health conditions that resulted in either alcohol use or drug use or nicotine use as ways that veterans have coped with anxiety and PTSD in particular, sometimes with depression. So yes, the short answer is yes, you can argue that pancreatitis from excessive alcohol use is a secondary condition, secondary to anxiety or PTSD. There are also other conditions. Lupus, for example, is a condition that pancreatitis can be secondary to. So if you have various service-connected conditions, it's possible that pancreatitis is a secondary condition or a complication from that issue.
Okay.
And so it can, in some cases, be bad enough that the pancreatitis will either get you to 100%, as we talked about, or to 60% and make you eligible for TDIU.
When looking at evidence considerations for getting the right pancreatitis rating, obviously events like hospitalizations leave a paper trail a mile long. But for documenting, more transient symptoms, abdominal pain, things like that,
Yep.
Obviously, veterans are going to be letting their healthcare provider know about these things at appointments. A tip to our veterans, even if it's the same symptoms every time you show up at the doctor's appointment, I know a common refrain is, well, why tell the doctor about it? I've told them about it 100 times before, they're not going to fix it. The point is documenting. But are there other things veterans could be doing to show their symptoms, show the severity to the VA?
Sure. If you have pancreatitis and you're trying to demonstrate the severity of the symptoms, a log is probably the best way to go, or is a good way to go. Make a note. Today I had constipation. Today I had diarrhea. Today I had abdominal pain. Today it was so bad I had to go to the quick care because I was having abdominal difficulties. And, one of the tricky parts with this is that things like gastritis and Crohn's disease and pancreatitis, those symptoms all kind of merge together. From the point of view of the sufferer,
Sure.
those things are all pretty similar. But if you're a veteran and you're having these abdominal problems, number one, you want to talk to your doctor about what the likely diagnosis is. But if you're contemplating applying for benefits, you really want to keep a log saying, this is what happened today, this is what happened this day, because nobody remembers. I mean, the reality is the human mind does not like to retain the experience of pain. So you just won't remember 6 months from now at your C&P exam how many times you had diarrhea or constipation or abdominal pain that interfered with your daily activities. You won't. So write it down, and then you can take it and show it to the examiner and say, all these days I had these problems.
Yeah. And on a related note, what are some common mistakes you've seen veterans make when trying to pursue a claim for pancreatitis?
Well, I think the biggest ones are letting the VA get away with saying, well, this was caused by alcohol. You know, I mean, we all know that overuse of alcohol can cause pancreatitis. No real dispute about that. But as you mentioned earlier, the reason that people use alcohol is often significant. Most people who are heavy users of alcohol have some underlying mental health issue. I certainly won't say that that's universal, it's not, but it's very common. People with bipolar disorder, people with depression, people with anxiety, you know, people with PTSD, it is very common for them to use alcohol heavily to try to feel better, if you will.
Right. Self-medicating.
Self-medicating, yeah. I had one poor guy years ago, and in a Social Security case, not a VA case. The doctor told him if he didn't give up alcohol, he was going to die. And he told the doctor his anxiety was so bad when he didn't drink that he would rather die. I mean, it's just, that was the reality.
It spells it out. My goodness. So for a veteran who gets scheduled for a C&P exam for pancreatitis,
Yep.
how can they prepare? Again, especially where something like pancreatitis, there are good days, there are bad days.
Yeah, well, I think there are three things you can do. Number one, make sure you have a written diagnosis. Get something from your doctor. Number two, have a log of symptoms, as we've talked about. Number three, bring your spouse or family member or roommate or someone else who is frequently around you. And, you know, most of the time, the C&P examiner is not going to listen to a second person. Sometimes they will, but a lot of times they won't. But say to the C&P examiner, hey, these are all the symptoms I've had. This is the frequency with which I've had them. And my wife, my son, my nephew, my roommate, my fiance is here, and they'll be happy to tell you about how often I have these symptoms if you'd like to talk to them. You know, the examiner probably will not talk to the person, but I think the fact that you bring them and offer their testimony will make it more likely that the examiner will take you seriously about the symptoms.
And related to that, if you end up having to go to the board, go to a hearing, and you're bringing that same person along with you as a witness, you can point to the C&P exam and say, yes, you know, this is the same person I brought to the C&P exam. They're with me day in and day out. They see these symptoms. They can testify to the lay aspect of the symptoms. And when I say that, I mean the things that anybody can see. If somebody's doubled over in pain, you don't need to be an MD to say, oh yeah,
looks like he's in pain.
Joe was moaning and doubled over, and he said, God, this hurts. And that happened, 6 times this past month, and he was, laid out for 6 hours each time.
Or Joe was running to the bathroom all the time.
Right.
Or,
yeah. It's really easy to get hung up on sort of the rules and regulations and legal jargon, but there are many times where that simple type of evidence, the common sense, obvious stuff, can make all the difference.
Yep, can carry the day.
Yeah, absolutely, and bringing that kind of claim to life. If a veteran is already service-connected for instance, diabetes or gallbladder disease, what are the best avenues for arguing that pancreatitis is secondary to one of those conditions. I know we've talked about secondary to mental health, but
whether you're talking about those or lupus or whatever other condition you're talking about.
Sure.
Two things. If the other condition's not already service-connected, you want to apply for service-connected status for that condition.
Absolutely.
Second, regardless if it is already service-connected or if you're asking to have it service-connected, you want to get medical evidence saying that you have both conditions and that the one is as probably as not causing the other. But if you, for whatever reason, can't get your doctor to say that, in the age of the internet, you can go on the internet and find medical articles that talk about the relationship between, say, lupus and how it causes pancreatitis or diabetes or whatever condition you're talking about, and submit those to the VA. The VA won't just run out and grant your claim if you submit a medical treatise article, but it will likely increase the probability that they will give you a C&P exam and that they will ask the C&P examiner to comment on the article, which obviously, if it's favorable, enhances your chances of a favorable C&P report.
And as another bonus tip, if you're having trouble telling which articles are going to carry more weight with a potential C&P examiner, etc., look at the URL and see if it's coming from a .gov address, because the National Institutes of Health and a few other U.S. government organizations have these large libraries of peer-reviewed medical research up for free. And if it's on one of those .gov repositories, there's a much higher chance that it's from a reputable source and will therefore carry more weight, if not with the VA, at least perhaps with the C&P examiner.
Right.
Every little bit counts when it comes to these claims. So we're almost out of time for today, but for a veteran listening right now who suffers from pancreatitis and believes it to be service-connected, what's the first step they should take towards getting their benefits?
Well, as you know, I always tell people, file the claim. But if for some reason you're not ready to fill out the claim form and file it, at least file the intent to file form. That will serve as a placeholder, gives you a year to actually fill out the form and get any other evidence you want to submit with the form together. But the longer you wait, the smaller amount of past due benefits you're going to be entitled to. The way the VA does it, if you file the claim this month, they start the time running for your past due benefits when they actually make the decision with the first day of next month. And so if you wait 3 months, that's 3 months of benefits that you can't potentially get at the time they decide your claim. And we know when they decide your claim, it's not going to be the day you submitted it. So it's always going to take them a certain amount of time, even if you're one of the fortunate people who wins at the very first decision, and that's a relatively small percentage, unfortunately. But even if you're one of those folks, it's not going to be the day you put it in. So the sooner you get it in or file an intent to file form, as long as you file within a year after that, the more financial benefit you're potentially eligible for. So I always tell people, file, 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 file. File now, don't wait. And the intent to file form is very simple. It's very easy to get that in. So file that. If you can't file the full claim form, if you need help with the claim form, fine, take your time, get somebody else to help you with it, gather evidence to go with it, whatever you want, but get the intent to file form in now to start the date running.
All right. And on that sage advice, that is it for our episode of Victory Over VA this week. Please be sure to like and subscribe and join us again next week.
We'll look forward to seeing you then.
Thanks for joining us this week on the Victory Over VA podcast. Make sure to visit our website, veteransbenefits.com/podcast, where you can subscribe to the show in iTunes, Spotify, or via RSS, so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, if you found value in this show, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or if you'd simply tell a friend about the show, that would help us out too. If you like this show, you might want to check out our free consultation to see how we can help you with your denied claim. Simply go to veteransbenefits.com and fill out the form. You fought for us. Now let us fight for you. And be sure to tune in next week for our next episode.